What profit has the worker from that in which he labours? I have seen the God-given task with which the sons of men are to be occupied. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has put eternity in their hearts, except that no one can find out the work that God does from beginning to end. I know that nothing is better for them than to rejoice and to do good in their lives, and also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all his labor. It is the gift of God. I know that whatever God does, it shall be forever. Nothing can be added to it, and nothing taken from it. God does it, that men should fear before him. That which is has already been, and what is to be has already been. And God requires an account of what is past. Amen. So at this point, we come to something of a summary and conclusion of the book so far. You remember they asked the question in chapter 1 and verse 3, what profit is a man from all of his labor? What is it that we are living for? And having studied the lives of men, verse 10, I have seen the God-given task with which the sons of men are to be occupied. He returns in verse 9 to the exact question that he asked in chapter 1 and verse 3. What profit has the worker from that in which he labors? And so what is the answer? What conclusions has he drawn thus far? And we're just dying to know. I know we've been having them as we've been going through. And just as we think we've got it, he sort of takes a sidestep here, riffing off the new idea of time that he introduced in verses 1 through 8. He lifts us to the concept of eternity. And in so doing, he steers us away from the question of what the point of our life is towards the question of how we should live, pulling in many of the temporary conclusions that he's reached so far. And so how should we be living? And I couldn't really decide how to put it best. I had something like 2 titles, and so I joined them together. And so here they are. I give you both of them. With fear and cheer, or as children before eternity. With fear and cheer, or as children before eternity. So first, the secret of the book, and really the secret to the entire spiritual life, is to live like children. Thank you, Lucy. And that's tricky, because when we talk about being like children, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that comes into our heads. And, of course, we're not saying that we should be uninformed, we should be naive, we should be silly about serious things or immature about life. But I think what we are saying is that we should live with simplicity and wonder. Simplicity and wonder. So if you think about where we've been so far in the book, we were asking the question in the first chapter, should we live to change the world? Should we live to understand the whole, all that God has made? Should we live to make a name for ourselves, to build an empire, to leave our mark on the world? And we said in chapter 1, but again we're reminded in verse 10 that we are but sons of men, that we are blips in the universe. We are like the river that runs into the sea, even though the sea is never filled. But if you remember, we said the river is not depressed, that it plays this tiny part, but rather is content to take up its humble place and to offer what it can in service of the grand scheme, to do what is within its reach. And that is the first lesson we drew in that first chapter. We asked the question, should we live for the pursuit of crafts and creations and projects and the good things of this life? And we said no, because everything will never be enough and nothing will ever last. But what we should do is enjoy what we can, when we can, as part of a balanced life, as a gift from the hand of God. We asked the question, should we live for righteousness? Should we live for justice? Should we live as light over darkness? And we said definitely we should, but even then we can't make our lives only about justice. That would be a foolish thing to do because we rarely get it, we fail in our own application of it, and then we die. And so even justice and the pursuit of good has to fit within a bigger scheme. There's more to life than doing what is right. We should do what is right, but there is more to life than doing what is right. And all of these ideas, note, come together in this passage in verses 12 through 13. He's pulling it all together. I know that nothing is better for them than to rejoice, to take pleasure in what we can, when we can, and to do good in their lives. Also, that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all his labor. It is the gift of God. He's advocating here for a life of simplicity and wonder. We are not to be overthinking our lives. We're not worried what's going to come of them. We are not paralyzed by indecision. We don't have analysis paralysis. We do our work. And whatever kind of work we have to do, all of it has a place within society. We do our work. We do good. We operate in a moral, charitable framework, and we enjoy what comes our way, whether that's food, opportunities for artistic, intellectual, adventurous pursuits, all of it simply as a gift from God for the season, as it comes, living with a light grip on all that comes our way. Living life as it is, which is to say, living life in the present, with a cheerful optimism, a gratitude, a trusting that our life has been ordered by God. We are to live like a child. How do children live? They live in the moment. They live moving from experience to experience with appreciation, excitement, and wonder. They delight in the small things, the treat in grandma's purse. They delight in the big things, the solar system and the planets. They turn whatever they can into a game when they can. Intrinsically, they just know that life is to be enjoyed. Children are not chewed up about what has been passed. Little Lucy's not awake at night wondering, should I really have pulled my sister's hair twice? And that particular sister, was that really a wise thing to do? No, the conflict is resolved. The sorry was made, and she sleeps sweetly at night. The children are not burdened by the future. Mary doesn't sweep off floors as she's doing her chores and think, as if what my life has come to is all of my life now to be about sweeping floors. No, she just takes the task and she executes the task and she moves on with her life to the next good thing. Children are not without responsibility. They just have limited responsibility. They're still learning what is right and wrong. They're learning how to worship, but they can breeze through the seasons of life unencumbered by worry, trusting that there are bigger people in the world taking care of bigger things. There is a simplicity and there is a wonder to the life of the child. And when I look to my own children, I see this, a happy, free, and balanced life. If you're around children, sometimes you will think, oh, to live again like a child. Now here's the thing, you never have to. You never have to stop living like a child. We can continue to live this life of simplicity and wonder in the present, moment to moment, taking each thing as it comes. And so how can we get back to that childlike way of living? Well, secondly, remembering eternity. Remembering eternity. That's weird, isn't it? What's he talking about, remembering eternity? I've never known eternity. Have you? Do you know eternity? Maybe you do. Maybe you do. Verse 11 tells us that God has put eternity in our hearts. And it suggests that there is an associated pain when it says, except no one can find out the work that God does from beginning to end. God has put eternity in our hearts. Now, if you remember the context here of that ode to life in verses 1 through 8, introducing time and the experiences of life, if you remember the constant theme of death and how it's troubling the preacher and it troubles our experience, then I think what he is doing here is bringing to surface hidden tensions and the core of that hidden tension and our frustration in life. And do you know what that is? The very core of our difficulty? I think it's this, that we are time-bound creatures who have been marked by and made for eternity. Time-bound creatures marked by and made for eternity. Now, of course, you're not conscious of the fact. You don't go around thinking about like yourself as an eternal creature made for an eternal God, but it nevertheless is just pouring out of you all of the time. So, had you not been impressed and marked by eternity, would you not, why would you, I'm mixing my, the ways around here. Okay. Why do you expect things to make sense if not marked by eternity? Why do you assume there is a rhyme and reason to life, a story to history, if you are simply a limited time-bound creature and that's the end of the story? Why are we always trying to see what cannot be seen? Why does time that is beyond us, way beyond our lifetime, matter to us? And why does it pain us that we can't be part of it? Why is death always shocking? Why do we agonize about the future that is not yet and the past that has been, as though they were still realities in our life? Do you know that the animals, all of the other animals that God has made, are not burdened by our neurosis? They're not neurotic as human beings are. Why? Because they were not marked by eternity. They do not have eternity in their hearts. These frustrations, these temptations that we face, the plague of our being a time-bound creature, these are symptoms of a subconscious sense and state of eternity that we are in some way aware of. I would say that even our memory evokes the sense that life is always present. We can still remember things that happened 30 years ago in our childhood as though they were still a present reality in our life today. The use of memory, the images, the pictures, the words, the replays, all of this is giving to us a sense that in some ways, though we have experienced time on a line, time should be always present to us. And I think that what we are experiencing in our memories and in our trying to understand and seek and press into the future is a faint reflection of the timelessness of God, who has imprinted something of his nature and a sense of his being into our souls. Has he not put eternity in your heart? And if so, why would he then put us in this torturous position? Why would he mark us with eternity, give us a sense of eternal things, but then restrict us to time and space and matter such that we moan and suffer and lament as we do our time-bound nature? Why does he do this to us? And I think the answer to that question is this, that we, aided by both natural and special revelation, might resonate and rise in contemplation to the eternity or of the eternity of our Creator. I think the preacher is saying this, that all of our yearning and grief and our searching is an unrecognized mark of eternity on our souls, and seeing it, we might rise and remember the eternal God. Whereas we make plans that fall apart because we are so dependent on everything as integrated into an interdependent creation, and because our insight and knowledge is limited and flawed, and because the execution of our plans is marred by the restrictions of our humanity, God is not like that at all. I know, verse 14, that whatever God does, it shall be forever. Nothing can be added to it, and nothing can be taken from it. The plans and purposes of God always perfectly come to pass. Why? Because he is not bound by time. He is not bound by a succession of events. He doesn't live his life on a line. He has no discovery of new information that would take him by surprise or cause him to have to make adjustments or make a course correction. He has no wisdom, no strength to gain. He is perfect wisdom and perfect strength. He's not dependent on any other person or any other thing. He is completely distinct from all of time and all of creation, such that his decisions are perfect and always perfectly come to pass. Verse 15, he says this, that which has already been and that which is to be has already been. What is he saying here? He's saying that to God, all things are always present. There is no past for God. There is no future. And everything that we and you have ever experienced as past, present, and future, all of it is before God at one time. Augustine says, I know I've shared this before, that for God it is as though all of creation and all of time is like a single psalm before him, and he just looks at it right there, and he knows and he sees and he has planned and he has written every single detail. It is all before him, the great eternal God. Now, why is he telling us any of this? Well, thirdly, that we might remember his eternity with fear. That we would remember his eternity with fear. He says, notice at the end of verse 14, I know that whatever God does, it shall be forever. Nothing can be added to it. Nothing can be taken from it. God does it, that men should fear before him. Why have a sense of eternity and be able to rise in contemplation? Yes, through natural revelation. Yes, also through special revelation to the idea of an eternal God before whom all things are present. Why would God do this? That men would fear. That's what he says. You might say, well, what kind of fear? There are different kinds of fear. And I think that what he is saying here is deliberately open-ended. Firstly, that a sinner might fear and tremble before a just and holy God. There's a strange verse at the end of verse 15, and God requires an account of what is past. What it literally says, is difficult for people to make sense of it, is that God is seeking what is pursued. That's what it says. God is seeking what is pursued. Now that might evoke the sense of a victim who's being chased by a bad guy, with the sense that God notes every injustice that is suffered. It might also evoke a sense that God is the pursuer, that he is visiting vengeance upon the wicked. It might also more generally be saying this, that nothing has passed and nothing will ever pass that is not known intimately and perfectly by the eternal God. It is all true. Now, if so, ought not sinners to walk with dread trepidation and fear? Sinners in sin, we at times in sin can evade authorities. We can fly under the radar. We can hide our agendas. We can at times get away with murder. But every step and every movement of the heart is seen by God from the eternal throne of righteousness and truth, seen by the defender of widows and orphans and all the meek of the earth. Without Christ, all will fall, deservedly perish, and be punished in shame and everlasting contempt. The voice of eternity in their hearts, the contemplation of the eternity of God reveals it, that they would fear, that they would repent. The intent here is that if we are playing fast and loose, we would fear the judgment of the eternal God. You might think you can bury things in the past. You can forget them. You can cover over them. You can gloss over them. You can say, oh, I didn't mean to do it like that. I didn't mean to say it like that. God knows exactly what you meant, exactly what you intended. He knows your every thought. He knows your every deed. It is all present and fresh before him. That ought to strike our souls with fear. With fear. If we do not take these things to him through Christ and seek mercy. But there is this other kind of fear, and it is the filial and sweet fear of a child. Of a child who is in awe of mom and dad. Because they can do and provide, and they know and love and protect and cherish and plan for their every good. Children are in awe of their parents. Little Lucy goes through the days and she is just like, wow. We are to Lucy like gods. And she is glad of the fact. She is glad of the fact. If God is eternal, as our heart reveals and as truth has told, and if we have sought refuge under the wings of the Almighty through the blood of Christ, then it is a different story altogether than the one for the sinner. If God is eternal, then we can rest in holy reverence before his awesome eternity. It is his eternity that frees us to live like little children, to return to the state of a child with simplicity and wonder. You say, can I really give up worries for the future? Can I stop worrying about what might happen and what might never happen? Is it not even built into me? As one who is marked by eternity, that I have this sense of that which is beyond me still being a present threat. Yes, the very impulse to know you can translate through the grace of God to a soothing voice that says to you, the future belongs to God. This anticipation of the future, this dread of the future, it is the mark of eternity upon your soul that has been placed there by the eternal God, and the future belongs to him. Everything that is beyond you, he knows and he will take care of. Can I turn from frustration and anger at what has happened? Can I turn from frustration and anger at what I can do nothing to stop? Can I turn from the frustration and anger of my powerlessness? Can I return to a childlike, simple enjoyment of life as it is, that is almost carefree? Yes, you can. Why? Because God will avenge for us. It is all before him, and he will take the right action at the right time. Can I remain cheerful through the bitter, the hard, and the wasted efforts? Because it seems like there are so many of those, and they grieve my heart. Yes, you can, because, and we touched on it last time, verse 11, God will make everything beautiful in its time. There is nothing that is overlooked. There is nothing that is wasted. There is nothing futile. Even evil things will be used for good. If we are children of God, children before eternity, we don't need to hold on to that frustration at what we got wrong, because God, the timeless God, will use all of it in his good time. Can I let go of what I've been trying to hold on to? I have to have this thing or I will never be happy. Yes, because we can trust that our happiness and our good are in the hands of another who sees it all, who knows it all, who desires our good, and who loves us absolutely. I look at the children and I see them as just so blessed and happy. And sometimes I want to go back to being like a child again. Sometimes I want to spare them the burdens of adulthood and don't want them to grow. But so much of this arises from our trying to live either without God or trying to do God's job for him. Trying to change what we cannot change. Trying to know what we cannot know. trying to chart the course for a life that we cannot chart, but to contemplate his eternity, his perfect vision, his perfect plan, his perfect solicitude, enables us to live as children again, entrusting ourselves to him, going through this life with simplicity and wonder, with fear and cheer before the eternity of God. And so it's in light of the fact that this simplicity of life that is presented here becomes a very real possibility for us. How should we live just in the present, taking all things as they come, as from the hand of God? I know that nothing is better for them. Nothing is better for you than to rejoice, to do good in your life, and that every one of you should eat and drink and enjoy good from your labor, whatever work he has given you to do, all of it as a gift from God. Amen.